We ask our brains to do a lot during the day, and that's before we even sit down to start working, or stand up if you have a cool standing desk. But we tend to pay the most attention to the things that already have our attention. You're working on your chapter, so you think about your chapter. You see the cabinet handle that needs to be replaced, so you make a plan to fix it, in theory. Now, as part of this job, I spend a lot of time reading about productivity. And one of the things that I have been really liking recently is the GTD method, or the getting things done, which has one really useful tool that I want to share today: incompletion trigger lists. This is a fancy way of saying it's a list that helps you remember the things that you may have forgotten. These are a tool that begin with a mind sweep, which is a big GTD thing. To do a mind sweep, basically, you sit down and you write everything on your mind. You dump it all the way out. Sort of like morning pages, if you're familiar with that. You get what's on your mind onto the page, or a digital document, or whatever, so that it lives somewhere else. And then you take the next step and put the actionable things into wherever your tasks live. That's very useful, but not particularly ingenious. Lots of systems have a dump it out and sort system. But this GTD system, and part of the kind of incompletion trigger list tool, is to then take a look at this incompletion trigger list to see if there are things that you might not be remembering that need to make it onto your radar. The standard form that I'll link to in the show notes is definitely really useful, but it has a lot of categories that are useful specifically for people who work in an office or have a more standard desk job, that own their own homes, that need to remember various home repair things or life chore things or whatever. But I would love for you to imagine making your own list of loops, or I prefer that to trigger in this context, that you could open at various points in various projects. So imagine a list where you have all of the things that you want to check for before you submit a document. Did I double check my citations? Are all of my filler words gone? Is it things formatted? Did I do an email, et cetera, et cetera? Things that you want to keep an eye on for your course before you shut things down for the weekend. Things that you want to remember to do in terms of your professional development. Things that you want to do for your human self, your body, your family, your relationship, your pets, or whatever. Maybe a list of things that you want to remember before teaching. It doesn't really matter what the topic of the list is, but basically, this is a document that you can build over time, and say you do forget something, it doesn't make it onto that loop list. It's then great to pull it up and say, okay, for next time, I'm going to put this here so that I remember to check for it afterwards. Just the act of looking at this list might help you remember that you wanted to schedule a dentist appointment, or follow up with that mentor that you met at the conference, or find that article that somebody talked about on Twitter. Putting things on your list makes it so that you don't have to remember them all of the time. You can just look at the list while you're dumping your brain out and then remember all the things that you need to remember. Let it help you. Grad school is such a complicated time. There are so many moving parts, so many different projects. A tool like this can really help you remember the things that are harder to remember, so that all of those little details that can seem inconsequential, but often make a big deal, like, did I turn this in on time? Did I remember to format this grant the way that I wanted to? All of those things then become just a little bit easier to work it into your workflow. Hope that helps.